Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who's calmed down since last night. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Hello, buddy.
Hello. So, USA 3, Martinique 2. This is our sort of longer review. We did the quick take, hot take last night, pretty much immediately after the final whistle, immediately after Jesse Zardes had held the ball in the corner to preserve the win over Martinique in the Gold Cup.
Yep.
And we were not thrilled. I think not great was your big reaction.
Yeah, I didn't realize that I'd reacted so strongly, and so I recorded in the office. Obviously, you're out of town, and I got on the elevators as I was leaving, and I had we had one tweet notification, and I checked it. It was like, wow, that's the loudest I've heard Taylor ever. And I was like, was I that bad? And I listened to it, and I was like, oh yeah, I was pretty mad. It's pretty mad.
But we also promised a rewatch, right? And a rewatch, and then a second opinion. What is the second opinion after the rewatch?
Sky is falling, world is terrible.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Buy bottled water and canned goods?
Yeah, obviously. And Martinique flags, just in case. No, I mean...
Four snakes!
I love that tweet so much. I think, as always, it is... When you rewatch the footage, this is what my football coaches in college told me. When you watch the film, it's never as bad as you think it was, and it's never as good as you think it was. And that's pretty accurate.
We didn't think it was good, so does that mean it wasn't as bad as we thought?
Yeah, I think the United States definitely had better possession than I thought they did. Now, certainly there were definitely some really bad spots, and there were some spots where I was just sort of like, really? That's what we're doing with the ball? But overall, those first 10 to 15 minutes, I remember Stu Holden and Landon Donovan saying, the United States has looked really up for it. Then I remember them saying the balance of power had changed, and in my mind, it was sort of like, no, the United States didn't look sharp at all. And so then I went back and watched, and they definitely were stringing some passes together and looked good in those opening 10 to 15. Then it kind of fell off, then the goals, and then obviously the final result. But it still wasn't super impressive, but it also wasn't super terrible.
Yeah, and what I saw as well was after the second goal, there really was a feeling of, okay, we've sort of broken Martinique's spirit, right? We've probably killed at least two of the snakes on their flag. This is going to probably end 3-4-0. It really had that feel about it. And then there was the defensive lapse that caused the Martinique goal. And it was like they were sort of reinvigorated. Do you know what I mean? But not that that's an excuse, because that is what happened. But there was like a version of this game that ended 3-4-0 as the US just started to pull out. And it would have been the same old, not like the best performance I've ever seen, but we took care of business and we got 3 points, right? And in the end, because Jordan Morris scored almost immediately after Martinique equalised, you can say that we got the job done and won 3-2.
Actually, I think I would disagree with you a little bit there, because if the United States had won 3 or 4-0 and had, even if they finished the first half 0-0, didn't look that good, came out and scored 4 goals and kept a clean sheet, then yeah, you're probably right that it's not like we're not like super excited putting all of our money on the United States to win the World Cup, let alone the Gold Cup. but I do think that, and I talked with former co-host Albert about this a little bit, that Martinique were able to score 2 goals and really fight back, and that the United States ended up having to really fight to get that win. It's a little bit of a different narrative than it would have been if they had kind of strolled to a routine 3 or 4-0 win.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So do you want to get into what went wrong then? Because after watching it twice, like we said, we're not as down and angry as last night, because ultimately that's not a useful emotion for the second game in the group stage of a Gold Cup when you're playing the sort of more experimental version of your B team.
No, it's definitely not.
You know what I'm saying?
But
if this was a version of an album, it would be like the very experimental extended edition album.
Oh boy. Otherwise known as the worst one.
This is Let It Be Naked. Remember when that came out a few years back?
No.
Oh, so you know Let It Be, the Beatles album?
I'm familiar. Wait, the Beatles?
Yeah. They're like the Rolling Stones, but better.
Oh, okay.
So they re-released that a few years back with all of the instrumentation, sort of all the orchestral stuff ripped out. So it was like Let It Be Naked, and it was just the bare bones of Let It Be.
I remember when Across the Universe, that musical, came out. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and he was just like, why are we doing this? The Beatles are the Beatles. Just let the Beatles be the Beatles. We don't need other people to be the Beatles. We're fine. Anyway.
But sorry, I'm off topic. But yeah, so the second game in a Gold Cup group stage where we've sent an experimental team, and because we've already got one game in the bag, we are playing the more experimental version of the experimental roster.
Yeah.
So let's not get too angry about that, but also let's think about what went wrong, and let's think about sort of who helped and hurt themselves going forward.
I want to do that, but I also want to like have like a slightly meta conversation. I don't know, but I think part of the reason why, because I was thinking about why I was so frustrated last night, because in the end it's a 3-2 win at a Gold Cup group stage. Yes, they could have played better, right? And I think it's because of everything you just said, you don't really know how to react to this team. Like,
it's confusing, right?
Is this a team that, like, okay, we figured out these guys aren't going to work, and we figured out some depth here? Is this a team that he's trying to see if they can play a cohesive style? If the U.S. can kind of have people come in and play whatever, like, he's asking them to do, he being Bruce Arena in this equation? Are we trying to see if our B team can compete at relatively high levels? Like, you just kind of don't know what the goal is here, and that makes it really hard to know how to react.
And I think, but Bruce Arena told us, right? There's a quote that I found from Bruce Arena from last night. He said, one of the things we're trying to do in this tournament is really look at some players in our pool that we as a staff haven't seen much of to help us make decisions moving forward with World Cup qualifying in September and October. So he's basically saying, I'm not picking my strongest 11. I'm picking players that I want to have a look at. Yeah. And if, a competitive game against Martinique actually is a decent spot to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you can see there are problems, but also we just about squeak through, right? Yeah. In the British sense. We actually did squeak through.
Agreed. But I think the only thing there that, like, again, this goes back to, for me at least, to it being a little bit confusing, is like, so these guys who are trying to prove themselves or we're trying to see, like, who can do what, like, say, Christian Roldan, for example. He didn't impress. Yeah. I don't think he looked that good. But I think it'd be too harsh to say, like, okay, so he's done. He's out of contention. Like, so then it's also sort of like you're still giving them chances. And I think that's why Bruce Arena has stayed much more positive than maybe we would have thought. He was positive at halftime. He seemed pretty positive in the post-game remarks. Same thing for the Panama game. And I think that's because as soon as you say, like, yeah, Christian Roldan looked a little bit slow, we're not sure about that, then it really does point to he's done.
He actually said, I thought Christian Roldan, given it was his first cap, did well, which is kind of the encouraging pat on the back positive version of, it could have gone better.
It was mostly okay. Mostly okay.
But here's the thing. I would say part of the problem with Christian Roldan and Kellyn Acosta, who did not have a great night either, was more maybe to do with how the whole game went than anything specific with those guys, right? But we didn't find out last night that Christian Roldan has a horrible touch. Christian Roldan can't play a pass. Right. Christian Roldan is slow, because none of those things are true. But we did see that he doesn't take over a game when it needs someone to step up in midfield and take over the game.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think that goes for Kellyn Acosta, at least in this situation, playing in that position. Because I do think, just with the way the United States set up, I think early on at least, it was sort of on Kellyn Acosta to try to figure stuff out and to try to be the kind of creative force between the defense and the attack. I know Juan Agudelo started dropping back and almost played as more of a number 10 as the game went on, but it just seemed like maybe Kellyn Acosta was tasked with, like, doing a defensive midfield job, making sure that there were no counterattacks through the middle, linking up play, but also finding those smart through balls, but also playing conservatively at time. And it just seems like it was maybe a few too many things asked of him so that he couldn't really excel at any one task.
It seemed to me that the idea that Christian Roldan would hold a little bit, like he would stay home and be almost a number 6, and then Kellyn Acosta would be sort of a number 8, where he'd be home when needed, but he would also have to step up and move the ball forward and try and get the US going, like get us clicking. And I almost think maybe Roldan should have been a bit braver. Like maybe he should have stepped out a little farther and got more involved. And Kellyn Acosta, I don't know, there were just one too many moments when he coughed up the ball or didn't get involved at all.
No, I agree completely. And I think that is as much a problem with the way the United States came out in this game as much as it was the way Martinique set up and then reacted to the United States.
Oh, yeah, so let's get into that then, because most people won't have thought about what did Martinique do to make this hard for the United States. What did you see from Martinique?
I saw basically it wasn't always really high pressure, but it seemed to me that Acosta and Roldan always had somebody within 10 yards or so. And that
two midfielders step to them,
Or you would see one of the strikers drop off, and then if that striker went to step to one of the center backs, say Omar Gonzalez is on the ball, if that striker stepped to Omar, he would always check and make sure that somebody was filling in and getting to Acosta or Roldan before he would go. And so it seemed like they had very clearly designed it so that the United States couldn't comfortably play through the middle and couldn't really establish nice sequences of passing through the middle. I think the U.S. did okay with it in the beginning, but as Martinique kind of reacted and got a little bit more comfortable, I think the United States struggled.
Because that's what we would have wanted to see, right? Is Roldan and Acosta moving the ball like back and forth from each other, and then breaking the lines and getting the ball into the feet of Agudelo or Jordan Morris, and they weren't able to do that. I keep thinking I want to see the US midfield do to teams in the Gold Cup what they did to Ghana in that friendly when it was Dax and Acosta, and so far we've failed to do that. And I'm starting to think maybe this was because that was a Ghana team that had already played their big Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers, and this was just a friendly in the United States, so they're not bringing their sort of tactical A game about shutting the US midfield down, right? Whereas Panama and Martinique are doing that.
Clearly you and I have spent time together, because I had about 75% of that exact same thought. And what the conclusion I came up with was maybe it's one of those, again, the film doesn't lie, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And like they just like a few moments shown through of Dax and Kellen Acosta like really linking up, and that's what I choose to remember from it. Because it does seem weird that they could have done that, but then obviously didn't against Panama, and a team like really struggled to link up play through the middle in this game as well. Even when I think Paul Arriola would come way inside and almost be a third central midfielder, they still seem to struggle with connecting those quick passes to really flummox the Martinique midfield.
But this is it, right? It's about being able to do it when the opposition is making it hard for you.
Yeah.
And that's why, for example, Michael Bradley is, like, I'll say this now because we felt worried a little bit for him after the Ghana game. Mm-hmm. That's why Michael Bradley is easily the starting midfielder for the United States.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and the Extra Time Radio guys were talking about this a little bit, and basically just saying that one of their criticisms of this team was that there was nobody there, I think outside of maybe Juan Agudelo, who was screaming for the ball. They wanted the ball. They had that kind of veteran, I want the ball when the time, like when we need something to get going, I'm on the ball. It didn't feel like Kellen Acosta or Christian Roldan wanted that responsibility or could make that jump, and Michael Bradley obviously can.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's about being willing to be the sort of authoritative central figure, almost like willing to be the director of the game. And that's why Bradley starts. That's why Bradley wears the armband. That's why he's important. You mentioned Juan Agudelo. He's a guy that last night on the Quick Take Hot Take, I thought he'd had a really bad game and hadn't done himself any favors. Mm-hmm. When I rewatched it before we recorded. I couldn't believe I was watching the same game because Juan Agudelo was excellent.
Yes,
he was coming deep, showing. He was like had a few tricks to open up some space. He was connecting play. He was sort of physically fighting everybody for the ball, and then he was going up front and being kind of a target man as well. Mm-hmm. So I can't believe I didn't see that. It must be sort of the sort of smaller work that a forward does, like the constant battling and the constant connecting, that is maybe easy to notice when you're not paying close enough attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I think it was also just that because things seemed to be so disjointed, it didn't feel like an intentional thing at the time. That's what I would say, at least. I remember last night thinking like, oh, he's having to do this basically, and that was my joke that Bruce Arena was like, just try to do what Pulisic does and see what happens. And so it just felt a little bit more like he was just kind of trying to make runs, trying to open up space. When you rewatch it, a lot of those runs were very smart. A lot of them were those sort of Joe Corona-esque, like drops in, gets the ball, but then does like that one touch, kind of reverse going the other way pass into the field of somebody else. And it was some really smart movement from Juan Agudelo.
So he was, a number 10 and a number 9. And I'd even say the main beneficiary of all that hard work was Jordan Morris, because a lot of the time it was Jordan Morris who ended up getting through on goal on the back of Juan Agudelo's work. Even if it's not a direct flick on or a direct pass, it would have been Agudelo that sort of started the move.
Yep, absolutely. Can we go back to the beginning, though, for a second? Because I have a theory about what kind of went wrong in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, please do.
Or after the first 20 minutes. So I mentioned earlier that I think Paul Arriola was coming inside, and so you would have almost like a midfield 3 at times. And I think that was to kind of make up numbers and give the U.S. some dominance in the middle, but I think it was also to invite Martinique to kind of collapse inside, make themselves really narrow, and leave space out wide. Because in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, it really was like the Jossie Zardes show as much as that can be a thing. That he kept getting the ball, kept going down the line. He played some okay crosses in. He played some bad crosses in. He had a couple shots. But I think that was the U.S.'s game plan, is that Zardes was always the outlet out wide.
So can I reiterate that to make sure I've got it right and for any listeners who missed it? So we're in a 4-4-2. It's Acosta and Roldan in the middle.
Right.
It's Zardes on the left and Arriola on the right. But rather than being kind of flat like that, you think the plan was for Arriola to drift in from the right to like a central attacking midfield role.
Yeah.
Make Martinique put numbers there and then have the ball go out left to Zardes.
I mean, I think that, that's what it seemed like kept naturally happening. And then I think it was supposed to then open up space down that right flank so that either Eric Lehigh could get forward or Paul Arriola could check back out wide, and then you would have some presence there. So you did see a few attacks down the right, but it felt like it was Zardes who was open the most consistently until Martinique realized, like, oh, they're trying to play to him. And there was, like, one specific moment in the 20th minute where it was like it had been the same sequence, like 2 times in the preceding 60 seconds that Kellen Acosta would get the ball, turn, play it out wide to Zardes. Zardes would go down the left wing. And then in this sequence, Acosta gets the ball, turns, and turns back because there's a Martinique player aggressively stepping to Zardes. And it seemed like as soon as that happened, the United States kind of were like, okay, we don't have that outlet anymore. And so they really struggled to then kind of try to figure out where to go next. And I think the other example, forgive me for kind of going on here.
No, I'm listening.
But do you remember I posted a 22-second video on Twitter of that was like Omar Gonzalez plays a ball long, it gets intercepted by Martinique, and then they come back, and that was the one where they ended up hitting the post.
Yeah, no padding options.
No, yes, yeah. I might have written that one too quickly while trying to watch the game and tweeting without looking. Never a good idea.
No passing options is what you meant, right?
Correct.
In your defense, they are right next to each other on the keyboard.
Are they? All right, cool. Yeah, I feel better now. But that exact same pass, that like long 40-yard ball diagonally, Omar done that 2 other times, like before that one occurred.
Right,
and it worked. And it worked every time. So it seemed like they kind of knew that they had Zardes out wide if they needed him, and as soon as they didn't, they were still trying to play it out wide, and they were still trying to force it through the middle at times, and it just really wasn't working.
So, not to go back to being a downer then, but Martinique figured us out, and then we didn't adapt.
Yep.
Oh, no.
I think then, if you go back to the original conversation we had, it makes a little more sense that if these guys have been told, do your jobs, like fulfill these roles, you're trying to play yourself into contention for the World Cup, that doesn't really invite, like, go out there and improvise and do what you feel. Like, it sort of is like, play your role, do what's tasked of you, show me that you can be the midfielder who drops back in and gets the ball and turns.
So that's very interesting. You're saying, so it's not about sort of, hey, we're going to figure this game out and win it. It's on you guys to figure it out. It's more about, like, hey, you go and do this role. Like, you're auditioning to be the understudy for the future World Cup matches. So you're almost asking each player to be selfish and just performing the task they've been asked to perform.
I do feel that. I have not heard that reported. I don't know Bruce.
You
Arena.
won't. I mean, if that's true, it's not going to be reported, is it?
No, but like, I haven't chatted with Bruce Arena about the instructions he gave those players.
Yeah.
But I did say this in the hot take last night. I was surprised by how many times it seemed like certain players out there were sort of trying to show that they should be on that World Cup roster. And the one that, like, I think he had an okay game, but the one that stands out the most for me is, and you'll probably remember it without even really thinking about it, there was a U.S. corner that gets partially cleared, and Paul Arriola is, like, backpedaling, and he's about 25 yards away from goal. Do you remember what he does?
This is the goal, right? Doesn't he shoot and Omar Gonzalez ends up scoring?
That's the one where he runs on and shoots. There's one in the first half where he shoots literally running backwards from like as though it's a FIFA glitch from about 25 yards out and just puts it 30 yards over.
Oh yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, and I watched it on FS1, and the commentators there were like, that was a bit opportunistic, or like that was a bit like optimistic. And then the British announcer, when I watched the Fox Match Pass
Fox Soccer Match Pass,
there it is, the stream, he again was like, interesting decision. And it just again it felt sort of like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be the one to score this heroic goal and prove that I should be there. And so you can kind of combine that with not wanting to make mistakes, and you can kind of see why the United States struggled to really kind of evolve and figure the game out as it went along.
Didn't we also talk last night about how the problem for the US was maybe being a bit too reactive defensively?
Yeah.
And I rewatched, and I kind of want to double down on that. Yep. And I kind of want to blame Omar Gonzalez more than anyone. Again, I was really expecting to rewatch and feel a bit kinder towards Omar Gonzalez.
100%.
Yeah?
Yep.
No more sympathy for him?
No, which, again, I said this last night, that, like, I like Omar Gonzalez. He seems like a nice enough guy. He seems like he's been a good servant, both for Major League Soccer and for the United States. But I was really, really flummoxed by his performance last night. He just... It seemed like he just kind of didn't know what he was doing, which is a shocking thing to say about a man who I do think is Bruce Arena's number 3 center back.
It seemed to me, I think this has been my constant consistent criticism of him, which is that he knows what he's doing in a one-on-one situation, right? Like he'll go and win the ball or whatever, but he doesn't know what he's doing in terms of being the senior defender. And so it's almost like maybe he's a better fit as a more junior guy in the senior team, where maybe Jeff Cameron sort of helps him out, than he is being the most experienced guy on a back line of, with Lehigh and Matt Hedges making, I believe, his competitive debut for the United States, and Justin Morrow. He would have been the guy that they looked to for leadership, but really he was more comfortable backing off and winning the occasional header.
Yeah, and I think there were like two specific moments that stood out to me. One was in the 32nd minute, Martinique get a free kick. And like there's plenty of time. They don't take it quickly. The United States set up. They have their line. It's like a ball booted into the box. And Omar Gonzalez just kind of stands there and watches it go over his head and watches Matt Hedges try to deal with it and then just fails to mark his man, and the ball gets flicked on. I think it ends up being shot either out, it goes wide, or it gets turned out for a corner by Brad Guzan. But either way, again, it's Omar Gonzalez just sort of like, oh, hey, there's the ball. And it's just not what you expect. And then I think we talked about this a little bit, that the second goal from Martinique? Yeah, second goal from Martinique. No, first goal from Martinique, excuse me.
Yeah, the one that changes everything, because it was 2-0 United States at this point, right? There's maybe half an hour to go, and you could just see the US cruising the rest of the way in with maybe a couple more goals before full time. Yeah. Everybody goes home happy in Tampa.
And instead, suddenly it's like, what is happening? And it's a good. I still think it's a decent shot. And maybe Brad Guzan could have done better. I know a lot of people were pretty frustrated by the fact that went in from the distance it went in from. I think it's a good shot from Parsaman as well. But if you go back and watch, at the time I blamed both Omar Gonzalez and Eric Lehigh. And my point then was like, it's going to look like it's Paul Arriola's fault because he was like sprinting back to try to cover, and it seems like maybe he had lost his man. In actuality, from my vantage point at least, I think it's 100% Omar Gonzalez, because he is marking, I forget who it is, maybe it's Arkin or maybe Harrell, I forget. Either way, he's marking a player, and then he ends up just dropping off to mark space about 16 yards from goal.
And so am I right in saying that pulls Lehigh over to do that job, which then leaves Parsaman free?
Exactly. Yeah. But there's no reason for Omar to have done that. Like, maybe you could make the argument that he doesn't want to give Parsaman a clear shooting lane, but at that point he didn't know Parsaman was going to shoot. And on top of you have other players there. So, and it's from distance. Like, it didn't make sense why you would make that choice. And it just seemed like his kind of default setting was back off and invite them at you.
Because you talked, if people are only hearing this show and they haven't also heard the Quick Take Hot Take show, we focus quite heavily, even in the Quick Take Hot Take, on the 11 minutes and 55 seconds moment where Omar pushes everybody up for offside. Yeah. But then when he sees a man running, rather than let him run into the offside trap, I mean, it's called a trap because you want people to fall into it, right? Yep. He follows him into the trap and therefore keeps him onside. So I feel like that's a very similar kind of thing. And I'd say this, maybe if we're going to be generous to Omar Gonzalez, we could say maybe the US is concerned about Martinique's pace. Yep. And so the idea was maybe, hey, Omar, if you have to drop a little deep and give us some depth, some cover, you've played defense a few times, right? That's kind of one of the things you do to deal with pace, is you give up on the offside trap and give some depth so that they can't run in behind. Maybe he was trying that. That's the only thing I can think, is that he was trying to be a bit more of a sweeper.
It's a credit to you for figuring that one out, because I did not. I heard Bobby Warshaw say that, and I was like, that makes sense.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, did he? He suggested that. Okay.
Basically, he said, like, he doesn't know this for sure, but it felt a little bit like maybe they had been told in the locker room, look, these guys, the only way they're going to beat you is with pace, which is what happened for the second goal. So sit back a little bit, don't get beat by pace. And so it did seem like maybe that was why the United States kind of routinely sat deep, is because they did want to get caught on the counter. And that's logical, except that you would expect players at this level of this caliber to be able to kind of adapt that a little bit. Like, if I tell you, this is a weird analogy, but I'm rolling with it. If I tell you, like, hey, Daryl, can you make some spaghetti sauce? You might just dump the jar into the vat of pasta and be like, I'm done with it. But you might add some like garlic and olive oil, a little bit of seasonings, and maybe some red onion, and suddenly you've got like a more fulfilling sauce. And
I'd rewatch Goodfellas and copy what they do.
I mean, you got to get the razor blade, which sounds ominous, but it's not. It's how you slice garlic. I'm not sure that works though, but. The point being that I feel like Omar was kind of told, like, oh, here's the jar, do with it what you want, and he just kind of served the jar of pasta sauce. He didn't really try to adapt what he was doing, and he didn't really try to, like change things up based on what was going on. It felt like he was sort of doing his usual job of being the one who kind of doesn't have to organize but can freelance a little bit but didn't realize that that's not what anybody else was doing.
Yeah, and I would have preferred to just see the US try and hold an offside line against Martinique, because I know I said earlier that one of the things you do is maybe drop off to give yourself depth defensively, but the other thing you do is you just have a perfect offside line and then you get them every time. Yeah. Like our team's done that against faster opponents, right? And it's worked.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that would have been the logical course of
action. It would have been a good test for the US.
Yes.
Okay, maybe enough on Omar. Maybe a quick look at his centre-back partner, Matt Hedges, because in some ways, I feel like Omar's kind of in Bruce Arena's plans anyway. Matt Hedges is one of those guys that's fighting for maybe that final spot on a plane to Russia, or maybe for the roster for upcoming World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's probably going to be one of the options as like the fourth choice center back, maybe fifth, depending on how many the United States wants to take.
Yeah, well, I think if you're the fifth choice, you're maybe not going.
Yeah, it's a decent shout. Well, I guess it depends. Like, are we going to go with Jeff Cameron as a potential right back fill-in? Who knows? I hope not. But I do think that he didn't really help his chances with this game, but I don't think he necessarily hurt them either.
I think he maybe hurt them because he got burned a couple times.
That is very true. Never mind. I have changed my mind. I have changed my mind.
You remember it now, aren't you?
Once
Martinique hit the post, right, before anyone scored, and I think that was on Hedges getting beat at the top of the box and Gonzalez backing off. It was like
my goodness. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. But then the second goal, the equaliser, I'm pretty confident we already talked about it, so maybe we don't go too much in detail, but Langiel comes off the bench, does that turn that he did against Nicaragua, and then burns Matt Hedges down that right flank and then chips the ball in. That goal starts with Matt Hedges getting burned by Langiel.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that I remembered that. And that was like, okay, maybe that's a one-off, but you're absolutely right. That one that we talked about where Martinique hit the post, Hedges just gets beat. Like he steps to the guy and just gets dribbled past. And that is a thing that's going to happen against better teams. And if you just get schooled like that, you're going to get schooled in those games too. And that is not ideal.
I really hope that for the rest of the Gold Cup, Matt Hedges isn't one of the guys sent home, because I would not like this to be his sort of defining Gold Cup moment. I think he's better than what he showed us. I think if he doesn't play alongside Omar Gonzalez, he might be better. I think maybe that Hedges-Beasler partnership might be the way to go.
I heard Matt Doyle suggest that maybe, just maybe, we see Matt Miazga in the final game against Nicaragua.
That's true. Nicaragua could be a little experimental as well, right? It could be some of the guys we haven't seen in this game. Do you want to move on to Nicaragua, or do you want to talk more about who's up and who's down in the current team?
I want to chat more, because the other one, I like that I said it wasn't that bad, and then I feel like we've just proceeded to rail on some people, and I'm going to keep that going. Because last night we were both sort of not as down on Giassi Zardes as everybody else was. Mm-hmm. Going back and watching, he definitely had some good moments, and yes, he did a very good job of holding the ball up at the very end. But what struck me about Giassi is that, and I'm sure LA Galaxy fans will maybe agree or maybe say we've been saying this for a while, man, is that it just felt like he kept doing 80 to 90% good stuff and then would do something wrong. So it would be a cross out of bounds, or would take way too heavy of a touch that would kind of kill a shooting opportunity, but then he would still try to shoot. Or that then he would take another touch to try to get in a crossing position, and by then Martinique had gotten back into good shape. And it just felt like he kept doing one thing wrong each time, but that kind of really is the part that stands out in the sequence.
I don't disagree, right? I'm not sure Giassi Zardes has ever executed a perfect play. There was always some sort of accident in there, or some sort of mistouch. But I think he provided more service than any other US player.
That is definitely true.
A lot of crosses, a lot of low crosses, high crosses with his left foot, with his right foot. And I actually think people will remember the shots over the bar. Mm-hmm. But if you look at his crossing and service from out left, I think the ratio of good cross to bad cross is really, really good. And my exhibit A for this is the third goal. The third goal that Jordan Morris scores that wins the game for the United States. Morris, I think, receives the ball, plays it out wide. Zardes takes a couple of touches down that wing, and then it's a perfect little cutback to Jordan Morris. The whole Martinique team is waiting for a cross, but Zardes has the vision to see Morris sort of hanging out at the top of the box. I think he gets the call, and he cuts back a perfect ball into the path of Jordan Morris.
That's true.
In the end, it all paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other one that might stand out in people's heads is when Paul Arriola plays a ball in low and Zardes just can't quite get to it.
Yeah.
And you might think, like, oh, man, he should have, like, seen that coming. Like, oh, it's typical Gyasi. He didn't, like, react fast enough. If you go back and watch it, he's on a full sprint, like, 40 yards from goal. Like, he is getting there as fast as he can. That's why I like him. Yeah.
That's why I like him, because a lot of players wouldn't even be in the situations to miss that Gyasi Zardes gets himself in.
True.
The ideal situation is if he scores them, obviously.
Yes. I do want to add this, though, because I know, again, what I'm about to say is probably the refrain that we've heard, or at least has been said pretty consistently about Gyasi Zardes by many different people. And I want to add that you and I try not to just kind of go with the narrative. We don't, like, if Twitter says, oh, Gyasi Zardes sucks, we're not going to be like, well, Twitter says it, he's terrible. Like, we'll continue to watch and try to make our own opinion. And I will say, with all that said, that my concern with Gyasi Zardes is that he has those little moments where the touch is too heavy, or he can't quite make up his mind when he's on the ball and just takes a little bit too long. And I don't really have faith in him to not do that on a larger stage. And so, like, against Martinique, he's going to have a couple more seconds than he would against probably like Slovenia or Slovakia. Like, and and then you elevate that to, like, you know, Brazil or France. He's going to have even less time. And so I worry about him in more competitive fixtures being able to execute even as effectively as he did against Martinique.
I think my thinking is that maybe this is the same as with Omar Gonzalez, with Gyasi Zardes. He's a useful player in the senior team because he's going to bring that effort.
Yeah.
Right? But when he's one of your senior players, as he is on this roster, like in terms of caps, right? Then his flaws become more obvious because he sees a lot more of the ball. Yeah. Or he's sort of more in charge of what's happening. So you see more of his limitations as opposed to just appreciating the sort of effort that he puts in.
All right. Fair enough. And either way, he's not done. he's going to be around.
Of course not.
He's going to be around.
I want to give a little shout out to Alejandro Bedoya as well, because we talked about how Kellen Acosta couldn't quite figure out how to move the ball forward and, you know, open up the attack. Alejandro Bedoya I'm not sure how long he's on the field before he plays that perfect ball in behind for Eric Lehigh to run onto and cross in low to Jordan Morris.
Yeah. No, I mean, I am not sure of the time frame either, but I can say that it was a really good ball. And if you watch it, you can just see him spot the run, and this is the veteran move, I think. If that's me, and I see you making that overlapping run, first of all, I'm like, whoa.
You'd be like, whoa, Daryl is far from home.
What is happening? But I would also be like you and I have been in those games where, like, the person makes that run and they're screaming like, yeah, I'm open, and you get so like, oh, he's open, I gotta play this ball, and you'll, like, force it through. And if you watch that again, that run is on, he spots Lehigh, he being Bedoya, and then he still takes another little bit of a touch and comes inside and pulls that defender out just another yard and opens up just a little bit more space and then threads that ball. He doesn't force it, he buys a little bit more time, and then he plays the smart ball.
Once again, that's that sort of veteran experience. That's why guys like Bedoya start regularly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess we haven't maybe talked so much. We talked a lot last night about Jordan Morris, but that Jordan Morris finish, I really like that one, because when you see the replay, you see the goalkeeper with his arms down. He thinks the ball is just coming to him, right?
Yep.
He's just ready to scoop it up, and then from the left of the screen, Jordan Morris just dashes in and pokes it with the outside of his left foot.
Yeah, I mean that's a good finish from like. I think the commentator said, like, oh, that's, you know, an easy finish. But it's really not. It was a good finish by Jordan Morris. And I'd say the second one as well looks easy, has a lot of bodies in front of him, places it, takes it with the instep, makes a smart decision, doesn't try to cut it back and wait, just finishes it one time, and that's what you want in your striker.
The winning goal, it was so important, obviously, because 2-2 against Martinique, this is a much, much angrier conversation and a much worse result for the United States. Doesn't Jordan Morris start that move as well? It's him that plays it out to Zardes and then him that gets on the end of it. So
you are correct, sir.
Kind of, salute to Jordan Morris for saving the US's bacon, I would say.
And turns and runs at the defense as well and then plays that ball in. So, yes, does a couple different things very well. But that leads to the next question. Do we think we see Jordan Morris in the game against Nicaragua? Do we think we see a team roughly similar to this, or do you think we see wholesale changes?
So this is tough, especially with the forwards, right? Dom Dwyer did great against Ghana, great against Panama, scored in both games. Agudelo didn't score, but on second viewing, I'm really impressed. I saw some Bruce Arena quotes. He was impressed with what Agudelo did, and Jordan Morris has 2 goals. So, I mean, I don't know how you choose 2 from 3, unless you go Dwyer and Agudelo as your strike force and you put Jordan Morris on the left. But then you sort of have to get rid of Gyasi Zardes. It's kind of, someone's going to lose out, I think. And then after the final group game, there's the potential for 6 more senior players to come and join the roster, and some of these guys are going to get booted out.
I mean, so then is it too lame to just say, like, we're not sure what's going to happen?
No, not at all, because I think that's exactly the case.
Yeah.
I would say I fancy us against Nicaragua, maybe even more so than against Martinique, if only because, like, transitive property, Martinique beat Nicaragua.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, one of them is bottom of the group and one of them is not.
Speaking of the group, we are top, right? We are top on goals scored. We have the same goal difference as Panama, and the same 4 points. But we scored more goals, so we're top. So it's going to come down to this Saturday, US plays Nicaragua, Panama plays Martinique, and it's basically between the two of us, it's whoever gets the best result will definitely finish top of the group, which is important because then you play like the least best team in the in the next round.
Yeah. So I think with that in mind, my guess, and maybe this is like a combination of what I think Arena might do and what I would like to see him do, is that we do get a decent number of changes, but maybe not. He made 8 for the Martinique game. He kept Omar Gonzalez, Brad Guzan, and Kellen Acosta, I think, were the only 3 that started. I would like to see him
maybe those 3 out, just in terms of who's played the most minutes. Maybe those three have had their shot.
I think so. I wouldn't mind seeing somebody else in goal just to see, another face in there to see what they can do. I wouldn't mind. I really wouldn't mind. I think Matt Doyle floated this one, the idea of Matt Miazga at center back. It'd be interesting to see, but then I could also see him wanting to kind of keep chemistry going and see if he can get a better bond in there. So
isn't it sort of now or never for Matt Miazga, though, in terms of getting on the field in this tournament? This is because Nicaragua's going to be the lowest pressure game to come.
Yep. I would say so.
So maybe Miazga should start just for that reason.
I would have no problem with that.
All right.
Excuse me.
Maybe Daxon roll down in the middle.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I bet you do see Kellen Acosta get a break. I wouldn't be surprised if the United States really tries to go for this one and make sure that they get top of the group, and maybe with that you get more of like Dax as a holding midfielder, and then maybe like Kellen Rowe as your number 10 or Joe Corona as your number 10.
Yeah.
You get a little bit more like attacking presence there with like 2 up top. That'd be interesting to see if it was. I mean, it'd be interesting to see any number of the forwards. I think you're absolutely right that I wouldn't mind seeing like Dom Dwyer and Juan Agudelo just running everywhere. I wouldn't mind seeing Jordan Morris with Juan Agudelo running off of him and continue to build that partnership. And I wouldn't mind seeing Jordan Morris and Dom Dwyer. So
yeah, there's
I'm really
no bad option.
Yeah,
there's no bad option, is there? Yeah.
Nope. I'm okay with anything. But we shall see what happens, because that game is, Saturday evening, about 7:30? 7 o'clock?
Yes. I think it's listed as 7 o'clock kickoff, maybe 7:30. Rob Stone tweeted out, it is not going to be on Fox Sports 1. It's going to be on FXX, home of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
You're right.
This should be excellent. USA, Nicaragua on Saturday, FXX.
And then followed by the gang versus the McPoyles. I'm down.
Yeah, it's a double bill. Bill.
So Daryl, we have said that people shouldn't lose hope. We are not going to lose hope. We're going to continue to watch this team, continue to root for them, and see how we progress, because I feel like there is a decent chance that this U.S. team gels, comes together, and like wins the Gold Cup, and there's a chance that they don't. But we're going to continue to follow them, and if listeners would like to follow and show their support, we have a way they can do that.
Oh, I think the best way to do it would be to buy a scarf from today's sponsor, Ruffneck Scarves, official scarf providers of US soccer. They have all kinds of US national team scarves in their online store at ruffneckscarves.com.
They really do. They've got like a blend. So they've got like the very definitive like USA red, white, and blue, but then they've got some with like eagle graphics on there. They've got a black one if you're trying to be a little bit more stylish maybe. They've got you covered. They've got a US women's national team one. If you want to kind of buy for both teams, you could do that. So you could wear one side men's, one side women's. I think that works too.
I mean, if listeners would like a discount on their scarf, they can use the Total Soccer Show discount, which is Total Soccer Show. All one word, all uppercase. You put that in at checkout and you get 20% off the cost of a scarf. That is a decent discount.
So thank you to Ruffneck Scarves for sponsoring today's show and having a wide variety of scarves, both U.S. Soccer, Major League Soccer, USL, NCAA, and obviously the Total Soccer Show scarf. You could get that one too if you want to show support for the Total Soccer Show.
Yeah, take a look at that one at totalsoccershow.com/merch, our new page with all our merch on it. But I do have a dream, Taylor, of people holding a Ruffneck scarf above their head as the US beats Mexico 3-0 in the Gold Cup final with a Dom Dwyer hat-trick.
You're going 3-0, not 2-0.
3-0 with a Dom Dwyer hat-trick.
All right, I like it.
Why not?
So again, thank you to Ruffneck for sponsoring today's show, and thank you to everyone who sent in scouting reports. We have quite a few.
Scouting reports. Okay, yeah. So some of these have been coming to our new scouting report page, which I think this is a very nerdy thing, but I'm actually very excited about the new scouting report page.
I love it so much.
It is TOTALSOCCERSHOW.com/report.
Yeah.
TOTALSOCCERSHOW.com/report. Tyler, would you do me a favor and please put that link in the show notes?
We'll see.
Because the TSS Scouting Network, it's one of the ways we fund the show, and it's also become a huge part of the content of the show provided by listeners. But it's got almost too big, right? Our inbox is bursting with scouting reports, and it's become very hard to keep track of them all, to get them all sort of collated, ready to do the scouting report segment of the show. This new form will automatically collate all of them for us and get it in one document and make it easy for us to read all the scouting reports at once.
It makes it so very easy, and it's so wonderful because I don't then have to I tend to get a little like, wait, hold on. And I probably am overthinking, but I'm like, wait, is he still 18? I feel like he might have had a birthday. So then I have to go back and it's nice to just have that information right there. It makes it way easier and way faster.
Yeah. So TotalSoccerShow.com/report, it has you put in your name, you put your player's name, his age or hers, the club they play for, then a report of a brief report of what your player's done. And then if you want, you can add a link to a news story or a goal or whatever. It is all set up to guide you through how to do a scouting report and also to get the information to us in the sort of most organized possible way. I mean, the disorganization is our fault, not your fault, but this will help us to stay more organized.
I mean, self-shots fired, but okay. So let's get to some reports then, shall we?
Okay, who we got, Taylor?
Up first, we've got Michael Lazar scouting Jordan Morris. You might have heard of him. Jordan scored twice against Martinique. Tonight may have gone a long way, I'm guessing this was written last night, toward making the case that he is still in contention for a World Cup 2018 spot. Clearly he's behind Wood and Altidore, but now he might be in a fight with Dom Dwyer and Clint Dempsey.
Yes, I forgot. Yeah, that is very important for Jordan Morris, right?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, Agadello's in the running as well. But yeah, Jordan Morris not hurting his case at all last night.
No.
We also have a scouting report from Matthew Cleveland. Matthew Cleveland is scouting Daniel Malen, the 18-year-old Dutch forward for Arsenal. Matthew says, while Arsenal's senior team is figuring out if they can hold on to some big names, they brought in some young names to training. Is young Mr. Malen ready to fill Alexis Sanchez's shoes? Probably not, says Matthew, but what's the harm in trying? He and 12 other youngsters will do just that.
There we are. Up next, we've got Andrew Strom scouting Chris Willock, the 19-year-old English forward for Benfica. Willock turned down a contract with Arsenal. I guess he will definitely not be one of the 12. He turned down a contract with Arsenal to sign a 5-year deal with Benfica on July 1st.
All right, an Englishman abroad. I'm always interested in Le Roast Beef, Englishman abroad.
I know you are, buddy. I know you are.
Guy Yedwab is scouting Serge Gnabry, the 21-year-old winger for Bayern Munich, recent move, and Germany. Guy says, in Gnabry news, Bayern has signed James Rodriguez. This likely means that Gnabry will be sent out on loan, with Hoffenheim the most likely destination. Guy also says that he thinks Gnabry will stay out on loan until either Frank Ribéry or Arjen Robben retires. Well, that could be a while.
It could. I guess, just stay out on loan. And I think the reason why he's linked with Hoffenheim is because they're in the Champions League this season. So they could probably use an international caliber player, is what Guy said.
I'm sure Werder Bremen are thrilled about all these developments.
Oh, yeah. They got to love it. Up next is Andy Sinsagali scouting Tommy Thompson. You might have heard of him as well. The 21-year-old American player for San Jose. You say that, but Andy says, the hype is done. Tommy is for real. Under new coach Chris Leach, Tommy has proven that he belongs not only on the field for the Quakes, but also as a central playmaker for his squad.
He's still my heart.
He recorded 2 exceptional assists for Chris Wondolowski in San Jose's 3-2 victory over the LA Galaxy, who, Andy says, are definitely on a steep decline. Tommy Time is now in San Jose. Let me try that again. Tommy Time is now in San Jose.
Guess what I'm doing after this show, Taylor?
What are you doing?
I'm going to go watch those exceptional assists to Chris Wondolowski.
That sounds about right. I am not surprised. But before you do that, we have more reports to get to.
Oh, okay. We'll do these first then. All right. Jen Ahern is scouting Jairo Rijdeveld, the 20-year-old for Crystal Palace and the Netherlands. Wasn't he formerly Ajax? Here we go. Rijdeveld will make the move from Ajax to Crystal Palace alongside manager Frank de Boer, reportedly for £8.7 million. The other Dutch Premier League manager, Ronald Koeman at Everton, reportedly tried to swoop in to get him, but was too late. So Jairo Rijdeveld, is how you pronounce it correctly, I think, is going to Crystal Palace with Frank de Boer. Good for for him. Good for him.
Lots of people swooping on transfers this window.
Oh, yeah.
Next, John Adams, not that one, scouting Shayon Harrison, the 20-year-old English forward for Tottenham. John says that Tottenham played a behind-closed-doors training match with Leyton Orient, and Harrison assisted on the fourth goal in Spurs' 4-0 training match win.
All right, good for him, and good for you for picking up my John Adams, not that one.
I think he's the one who started that.
Oh, is that right?
I believe so.
Jim Brochard, I'm pretty sure it was me. Jim Brochard is scouting Jonathan Klinsmann, the 20-year-old American goalkeeper for Hertha Berlin. After a successful trial, Klinsmann signed with Hertha Berlin, Jim says. No word yet on the length of the deal, nor whether or not he can hope to see any first-team minutes this season. I did, following up on this, I did see that somebody wrote a story about Jonathan Klinsmann going to Hertha Berlin, and Jurgen Klinsmann retweeted it, but correcting something in the story. He was complaining, that Jonathan Klinsmann, in the story they said that he was born in California, and Jurgen wanted to make very clear that Jonathan was born in Germany.
Ooh, all right then. That's fair.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed reading like little bits of information. Like I didn't realize that Jurgen is like an official club member of Hertha, and I didn't apparently. And I also didn't realize, and I also definitely didn't realize, because who would, that I guess Klinsmann was told that he had made the team after a breakfast. So it was like they had like the team breakfast, and then the coach came by. And like the director came back and were like, "Oh, by the way, you're on the team."
Oh, nice.
Yeah, not bad.
Was it Lorne Michaels? Is he the coach?
Yeah, he did.
He had all those SNL stories where he just assumes that you know that you're on the show, even though he hasn't told you.
You've made it. Congratulations. Up next, Mason Kriz, scouting Marco Farfan, the 18-year-old American defender for Portland Timbers, or T2, depending on what day it is. Farfan was named
Judgment Day.
Yes, was named to the roster for the MLS homegrown game, which is part of the All-Star festivities. He's one of 4 defenders named to the roster, so he will presumably start. In addition, T2 played Los Dos last week and lost 4-3 at home. The good news is that Farfan had 2 excellent assists. The bad news is that he pulled a Yedlin v. Colombia and conceded a penalty quite needlessly.
So that would be a handball, right? A handball.
I'm guessing so.
I took a look at that homegrown roster. Wow, it is full of TSS Scouting Network talent. It's really exciting to see. They have like a homegrown team that will play against the team when the All-Stars play against Real Madrid. So we'll be able to watch some of these guys in action. All of those reports can go to TotalSoccerShow.com/reports so that our inbox doesn't actually explode the day after the MLS homegrown game.
I would appreciate that.
John Crispin is scouting Pakamani Malambi, the 19-year-old South African midfielder for Bidvest Wits. Big couple of days for Pac-Man, says John. He followed up winning the ABSA Premiership Young Player of the Season on Monday with an announcement of a 3-week trial with an undisclosed Portuguese club. Keep your fingers crossed that it's Porto or Benfica and they like what they see.
We will.
Fingers are crossed. Dan, can you hear me crossing my fingers on mic? You probably can't.
I can't. I definitely did. I have that good of hearing. You've uncrossed them now, haven't you?
I have.
See, there you go.
So thank you to Michael, to Matthew, to Andrew, to Guy, to Andy, to Jen, to John, to Jim, to Mason, and to John for today's scouting reports.
That's good reading by you.
Thank you. If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, you can do so at TotalSoccerShow.com/join. If you've already joined and you want to receive your player and you haven't yet, please email me, Daryl, D-A-R-Y-L, at TotalSoccerShow.com. Subject line, itchy feet, and I will make sure to get you your player. I've had, I think, 2 or 3 emails in the last few days asking me to assign players. I will get it done. I promise. You can count on me.
I always do. The other thing that we should probably figure out, though, before we go, we haven't talked about this much. Schedule for the rest of the week. I'm assuming this will be it until the Nicaragua game, and then we'll do a quick take, hot take after that. Does that work for you?
Yeah, because this is kind of our summer schedule, right? Yeah. So I'm up here by Grand Lake in northern Michigan. I'm on semi-vacation. Always got time for TSS, but I'm on semi-vacation. So yeah, let's wait until the Nicaragua game, and we'll do a quick take, hot take after that game.
It must be nice, because I am busy trying not to have to go outside ever, because it is like 107 degrees here today.
I had forgotten that there were places on Earth where you could step outside in a T-shirt and not immediately sweat through it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
So yeah, I'm going to enjoy cooling off up here. Final thing, heating up, the Top Draw Soccer Show.
Yes, sir.
We published it to iTunes yesterday. It is now live. You can go find the Top Draw Soccer Show in iTunes. There's a good 4-minute preview episode. It's just me and Will Parchman on the first preview episode. The title is Play Your Kids. So that should give you a good indication of what the first episode is all about.
Forcing your children to play soccer?
No, it's more like asking coaches to play the kids.
Oh, I see.
not force your children to play.
Get out there.
It's the opposite of what you should do.
I'm not sure it is.
See, this is why we have Will Parchman on the Top Drawer Soccer Show and not just the two of us.
He's a moderating influence.
Yeah.
All
right, Taylor. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again after USA v Nicaragua.